The Disney Star Wars sequels are widely considered to be horrible movies, even by most Star Wars fans.
They fly now? They fly now!
Now, there are a lot of reasons why these movies were horrible. The political undertone of the whole trilogy, the creative decisions made in The Last Jedi, changing what the Force is and what it can do, and the destruction of the most beloved characters in the whole story, such as Han Solo, Luke, and Leia. We could dive into any of these reasons, and there are more, but I think it is much easier to explain why these movies were bad in just one way. The story does not follow an archetype. What is a story archetype? A story archetype is a recurring narrative pattern or universal blueprint that underlies many stories and transcends culture and time. Archetypes simplify complex human experiences into relatable and recognizable structures, making stories easier to understand and emotionally resonant. They often reflect shared human experiences, human struggles, desires, or journeys. Here are a few examples of common story archetypes. Number 1, the hero's journey. A protagonist leaves the familiar world, faces trials, grows through struggle, and returns transformed. A good example of this is Simba in The Lion King. Number 2, rags to riches. A character rises from humble or a disadvantaged beginning to achieve success, power, or love. A good example of this is Cinderella. Number 3, the quest. A group or individual sets out on a journey to obtain something of great importance and face obstacles along the way. A good example of this is Lord of the Rings. Number 4, a tragedy. A main character is brought low by a fatal flaw, a mistake, or unavoidable fate. This is the fall of man. Great example is the story of Satan in Paradise Lost or Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Number 5, rebirth. A character undergoes radical transformation or redemption, often after hitting a very low point or falling into the abyss. The best example of this story is the story of Christ. These are just a few examples of what a story archetype is, and great stories overlap many of these story archetypes. I think the Disney sequels attempt to follow the hero's journey, but it all goes wrong, and ultimately you cannot call these movies a hero's journey. First, let's discuss what made the original Star Wars trilogy so great, and what story archetypes each story followed. Let's start with the original trilogy, following Luke Skywalker. The original trilogy is a great example of a hero's journey, following this path of a young, incompetent character that is profoundly hopeful, then tragedy and suffering, then training, growth, and self-improvement through struggle, and then finally the character returns transformed as the hero and overcomes suffering and defeats evil. Keen Star Wars fans will obviously see the parallels here, as Luke can be described as the embodiment of hope. A young boy looking out at the twin suns, wondering what else is out there, looking out at destiny itself, and he has hope for a better life and a better future, not just for him, but also for the entire galaxy. Then, stormtroopers come and kill his aunt and uncle, and he must flee his home world of Tatooine. This is the start of the hero's journey. He loses that which he loves, he loses his family, and he is thrust into adventure. On this adventure, he trains, he learns the ways of the Force, and he makes friends, he makes enemies, and he makes a lot of mistakes, and he fails as he gets his arm cut off at the end of Empire Strikes Back. Then he returns in episode 6, and the movie title is Return of the Jedi. After he finishes his training and becomes the hero, he then defeats evil with love, love for his friends, and love for his father. It is a beautiful depiction of the hero's journey, and it is no wonder that so many people fell in love with the original Star Wars trilogy. Now, on to the prequels. A lot of people criticized the prequels when they came out, but I think they are more appreciated now. As someone who grew up on the prequel trilogy, they hold a special place in my heart. The prequels do not follow the hero's journey, but they follow the story archetype of a tragedy. For me, nothing will ever beat the hero's journey, but the fall of man or the tragedy is also a very powerful story archetype. The Garden of Eden, or Milton's Paradise Lost following the fall of Satan, are good examples of this archetype. This is exactly the story of Anakin and his fall to the dark side. Anakin is a sweet and hopeful young boy when we first meet him on Tatooine, but over the course of episode 2 and 3, we watch his fall to the dark side as he experiences the death of his mother and fears for the death of Padme, the woman he loves. All the while, he is being manipulated by evil, and his pride and arrogance pushes him towards evil until he eventually falls to the dark side and becomes Darth Vader. For all the flaws of the prequels, this is still a great depiction of the tragedy. Now, finally, we get to the sequels, and there are a lot of problems. The overall writing and the storytelling is just bad, but it attempts to follow the hero's journey archetype, but gets it all wrong. Rey Skywalker never really struggles. She defeats Kylo Ren the first time she ever picks up a lightsaber, and she embodies the Mary Sue character archetype. What made Luke Skywalker a compelling character is that he fails. He almost gets killed by Darth Vader, but then he undergoes a radical transformation so that he may become strong enough to defeat evil. Rey, on the other hand, in the very first movie, without any training, defeats Kylo Ren, who was trained in the Force since he was a boy. This does not make for a very compelling hero. Rey doesn't really go through any struggle or suffering. She is searching for her parents, but this is never really fleshed out in the story. You cannot have a hero that does not suffer or that does not struggle. It just doesn't work from a storytelling perspective. If Rey can defeat the bad guy, Kylo Ren, in the very first movie and in their very first fight, what really is the point of the story other than simply watching events happen? To try and make up for this story flaw, they bring back Emperor Palpatine from the dead somehow. But the problem is, all this does is take away from Luke's story and Anakin's redemption arc. It detracts from the significance of those stories in attempt to just prop up this story that doesn't really have any struggle or suffering or the same kind of love that the original trilogy embodies. Ultimately, it is just a poorly written story, and the characters were not compelling. Mind you, this is no fault of the actors or actresses, but unfortunately, they were constrained by the lack of a cohesive story archetype. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to subscribe.